Hey people, welcome back to Waka Waka. In this video, I'll be showing you how I recreated the Vivienne Westwood corset as seen on Gigi Hadid and my favorite Kardashian Kourtney. This request was made underneath my Bustier tutorial where a subscriber asked me to make the Vivienne Westwood corset, so that is why I am making this tutorial. So if you haven't seen that Bustier tutorial, please check it out. I'll be making my pattern from a loose fit jean cover up with a deep neckline that is similar to that of the corset. I started by pinning the two shoulder points, some that at the armhole and also at the waistline, reaching the bust point. I then measured my bust point, the distance between the waistline and also the width of the dart, and finally the amount taken at the shoulder point. I then laid down the cover up with the pins still in it and I marked it all through. And for the back, I measured a 1-inch seam allowance and then did the marking all around it too. And divided the waistline into 3 parts and connected to the point made at the armhole. And I measured 1/2 inch upwards and blended it into the armhole cause I found the armhole to be a bit low. Coming to the front pattern, I drew in the waistline dart and I repositioned the armhole dart and I redrew the armhole upwards using 1/2 inch allowance. I then measured 1/2 inch below the neckline and I redrew it. I marked another 1/2 inch below the neckline and I drew a horizontal line to the armhole, and then I marked the length of the corset. At the top of the line, I marked 1.5 inch and then another 1.5 inch followed, while at the length of it I marked a 1 inch inwards and then another 1 inch. I then connected these 2 points using straight lines. While for the third marking is done right on top of the bust line, and then I connected it to it. I cut out the neckline, the length and the side to manipulate the dart. And after the manipulation, I redrew the armhole and I drew in the 4th line and I cut out the rest of the pattern. I marked 3 inches below the bust point and I drew a horizontal line across it, and also did a partial side curve. Brought in the front side and marked it, and I drew in the back length. For my choice of fabric is a polyester satin, which is a bit light and it has a dull and a shiny side, and I'll be using the dull side as the front part while the shining side will be for the bias part and the bust part of the corset. I laid out the fabric and I cut out 4 of each with 1/2 inch allowance all around it. I cut out the bias and made it and I also marked all of my seam allowance. And did the marking for all the corset line. Also during the cutting, I cut out another layer of fabric which starts from the top of the garment till the end of the bust line, which was previously marked. So the first sewing is done at the bust area, which stopped at the waistline, and then I sewed the panels and the lining. And then I pressed all of the seams open. And after doing that, you can see that the garment is already coming together. Then the first bias binding is placed and sewn underneath the bust line. And then I pinned all of the vertical bias binding, and I did the same for the back and I sewed all of them. After the sewing, I cut out all of the loose thread and pressed all of the seams open, and I did the same for the front part. After this step, I pinned the lining upper part with the lower part and sewed it, and I also understitched it. And I did the same for the main fabric. And then I inserted all of the boning for both the front and the back part and trimmed the excess of it. I added the bias binding to the sewn joining at the top part and I sewed it. After doing all of this, I placed the bustier on the dress form, redrew the neckline, sides, and I brought in the lining to make sure that it is the same. The main fabric and the lining side with the wrong sides facing, and I sewed it together. Then I brought in my back cutout, and the front shoulder is sandwiched in between the back cutout. I pinned it, and I also did the same for the side, and I sewed all of it. I then applied the zipper to the center back and sewed it. For the bias binding, for the neckline, the armhole, and the exterior part of the corset, what I did is that I cut out 2 inches of fabric strip, put it through the bias binder, and it came out as a 1-inch strip. I then folded the end of it and applied it right on top of the zipper. And through the rest of the neckline. And I sewed it. I did the same for the armhole and the exterior part of the corset. And I pressed the whole garment and the corset was ready. Thank you guys for watching, and see you in my next tutorial. Bye.